It's 1963, 7 o'clock in the morning, and a man named James A. Head has called me to come down to his office, and I know what's coming. I've recently been arrested. I've done some foolish things, and he is going to give me a lecture. And there I am, waiting on it. He has in front of him the police report. I'll tell you how I got there. I've been working for our congressman from Birmingham, Alabama, since 1960. And I was coming home. I came home on July 1st, 3 weeks after my youngest child was born, Philip. And I was coming in the belief that I was going to be hired as the executive secretary of the Democratic Party of Alabama. I had reason to believe that I had it locked up. On I had run a couple or 3 campaigns, so I was well known. I knew how to do politics. And I was going to the meeting in Tuscaloosa where 64 men, 8 members from each of the congressional districts, were going to decide who's going to be the executive secretary or director of the party, handle the mechanical parts of the party. And I got there, and I got a surprise. I didn't get the job. The governor of the state of Alabama, George Wallace, and I should have remembered, guess what? The governor decides who is the leader of the party. He's the leader of the party, and he selected his own person. And so I was unemployed. I had come home to Birmingham because it had been through a great crisis. It was still in that crisis of a racial crisis. And I was soft on segregation. Every office holder in the state of Alabama was pledged to maintain segregation. The motto of the Democratic Party in Alabama was vote white, vote right. Had a rooster on it, just like you had in Indiana, too. But I was feeling slightly different, and I involved myself, or had already begun to involve myself, in what I would call interracial work. And I worked with the Birmingham Council on Human Relations. In that summer, I ran a voter registration drive. I did a number held a number of conversations, and we reached out across racial lines, trying to establish some communication. It was against the law for black and white citizens to be in the same room together. Now, you can't believe that, but I can tell you, people have been arrested for that. Lots of them. So anyway, went along, and we were going to have the integration of our schools, court-ordered integration, in September. 9 black children would go to our schools. The governor was pledged to close the schools. The state legislature had already voted that they would close every school in Alabama rather than integrate. In Birmingham, what happened was that the students, white students, rebelled. They went crazy. High school students refused to go to school. They terrorized people to keep them from going to school. They kept the teachers from going into the schools. Teachers that actually went in, got into school. They had poured sugar in their gas tank, which is a horrible thing to do. And it was a chaos that went on for 3 or 4 weeks, and it was ended only by September the 15th, when the 16th Street Baptist Church was blown up, and 62 people were injured, and 4 girls were killed. And this brought the community around to some semblance of sanity. 2 other boys were killed that afternoon, one in a police shooting and one by kind of random a bit of violence. Well, this tore at my heart and my soul. I was really torn up about this and was looking for a way to do something. Then the state fair occurs every October, and on October the 15th there was going to be Governor's Day at the state fair. So I and some 10 other people, 11 of us, black and white, we decided that we would demonstrate, that we would picket the governor during the state fair. The murderers of the little girls were still at large. I can't tell you how Governor Wallace had interfered with that and cleared the prosecution of those men who were ultimately, or 40 years later, were convicted. But he had. And so we went to the fair, and we were walking down the midway, and all of a sudden, not very sudden, there are people, hey, hey, they're shouting out their cat calls, they're screaming. Next thing I know, they're up in our face, nigger lover, you, blah, blah, and our group just dissolved, and then these several men surrounded me, and they began to, first of all, just push me from one to the other, and then they started hitting me, and then they started beating me, and then I had taken the course in how to protect yourself in a demonstration. I wasn't a complete innocent, and I fell to the ground, and as I fell to the ground I had a life review, but on the ground I could feel them kicking me one after another, and I could feel my body move. And then I saw this whole scene. I had this life review. As I said, I was born, and I went to school, and I graduated from high school, and I went to college, and I got married and had children, and everything right down to that very moment. And then up above, there was a camera eye. My brain's eye was looking down on this scene, and it could see me being kicked. So I could see me being kicked. And then the camera came on down, and then it went around to the face of each of the men kicking me. 7 of them. And then I noticed the face of every one of them was my face. I was arrested, put in the back of the police car, charged with inciting a riot, taken downtown, fingerprinted. They were writing me up, and then it was discovered that I was a homeowner. I owned a house. So I was released on my own recognizance. I had to get back out to the fair to get my car, and then I drove home, and then I'm laying up in the bed, and I'm thinking, what does this mean? What is this? The face of every one of them is me. And then I thought, yes, I could be them. I'm no better than they are. And I had, as some people who've become very identified with black folk and the struggle for equal rights, I had thought of whites, these kind of whites, as rednecks, white trash, trailer trash. And I thought, no, I've got to act, I've got to come out of this in a different way. And so the time of that, I had applied I'd worked on newspapers and I had applied at the Birmingham News for a job. And I went down for my interview on Thursday to meet the managing editor, Leroy Sims, and he was there, and he stood up and we had a little standing thing, and he had a piece of paper in his hand. And he said, "Well, Harris, we know you're a rat. We thought you were more like George Ellis. We thought you know, we didn't know, you do this kind of thing." Pointing at the paper, and then I figured it out. He had some kind of paper, some kind of police report. And then he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I'd rather hire a nigger than a nigger lover." And I had sense enough to say, "Well, I guess this interview is over, sir." And I left. That was October 22nd. I still don't have a job. I got a house, mortgage, wife, 3 children. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea. I have to go tell my mother and father. I have to tell my wife's mother and father. I've kind of messed it up. And I felt like a fool because I was born in Birmingham. I knew about, I knew if you do these things you take risk. I knew that the white community will shun you. Got a phone call from Mr. James A. Head. He said, "Come to my office, see you 7 o'clock in the morning." Well, I figured he's going to give me another lecture. I get there. I see he has a report on his desk. He looked at that and he said, talked to me in a few minutes, and then he said, "This doesn't mean anything. Just threw it away." I had never seen it at that point. And it described me in most unfavorable terms. And it described me as a confused white man. That might be right. I might have been a confused white man. But he leaned back and he said, "Have you ever thought of selling?" And I said, "Well, I've sold shoes. I've worked with that." And he said, "I only offer you a job. $100 a week, okay. 10% commission. I want you to start Monday." "Yes, sir." Out of the blue, random act of kindness. He was taking risk too.